Hi everybody, welcome to Leading for Life Stories Season 2. My name is Bob Judson and I'm your host for this podcast, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you here joining me. Thanks very much, and I really hope you enjoy what follows. Welcome back. This week I thought I'd do another thematic episode, and I'd talk about hearts and minds. It's a bit of a cliche, hearts and minds. Lots of people talk about it. Lots of people think, oh, okay, we need to play the hearts and minds game. We need to keep everyone on side and so on. But why does it really matter? What's important about it? And for me, it's pretty straightforward. If you're going to talk about leadership, then hearts and minds really does matter. Because leadership's about inspiration, and inspiration contains a number of different elements in my book. It's got a vision piece. You've got to have a vision. You've got to be able to tell people where you're going. You've got to convince them that they're going to follow you, and they've got to believe in you, and they're following you for the right reasons, and they're not just following you kind of because they're curious in a negative kind of way. You want them to be really positive about what they're doing. But just as importantly, it's about recognizing the team, bringing the team with you, supporting the team, protecting the team, inspiring the team in every way possible, so that actually they think that you're the leader they want you to be, and that they genuinely feel that that's why you're worth following. And the hearts and minds element of that is really important, I think. If you don't have that right, then you can have all the vision you want, all the strategy you want, and everything else. But actually, if your team don't believe in you, and they don't trust you, and they don't have faith that you're going to look after them in every way, then of course you are somewhat on a hiding to nothing. They might work for you for a while, and they might work for you just because they kind of haven't got any choice, and they're feeling that they're getting paid, and therefore their lives are tolerable and so on. But it won't inspire any loyalty, and it won't actually give you a position where long term you've got the real security of knowing that they do have a kind of proper relationship with you. So I think it's crucial. I really do think it's crucial. Saying thank you is a really big part of this. I talked about that in episode 21, where I think that thank you are two words that are probably, when they're put together in the same sentence, the most underutilized in the English language. I think people are really bad about thanking and acknowledging people that work for them. And it's not about some big, effusive, massive, formal thing necessarily. It's actually just about going and saying thank you, and finding a way to do it that is as personable as possible and as appropriate for that individual as possible. Not everybody wants you to make a huge, great song and dance in front of the whole team and give some big recognition and stand up and give a kind of team individual award, whatever it happens to be. A lot of people actually would just prefer you did it a bit more privately and a bit more low key, but going and just wandering up to their their workspace and saying, hey, thanks, job well done, you did a terrific job there, it was really appreciated, it's worth its weight in gold. Small notes, handwritten notes in particular, particularly from more senior people, that people know if you've written a note that's a handwritten note, then you took the time to write that as a leader. That is appreciated. It's not something that's been written by the staff or the PA or whatever. It's something you have taken the time to actually do. And never, ever underestimate the value of that. I think the amount of times in my career where I've really had cause to recognize that is something that's worked. It's really helpful in bringing the team along with you. And particularly when stuff's gone very well or significant challenges have been overcome and those sorts of things, that's where it matters the most. Because often you see leaders, and it's a style I've seen over time a few times and I really don't like, where they're very happy to claim all the credit. They'll turn around and be with the one up, two up boss. It was their team that did it, but actually they're the ones claiming the credit for it. They get recognition, they get the bonus, they get the promotion, they get the award or whatever. And the reality is, it's never that. You are only as good as the people that work for you. And unless you are genuinely working and entirely on your own, doing something entirely solo, then you are part of a team. when I look back at my Air Force career as a pilot, it's very easy to think, right, I'm in a single seat airplane. What I achieve on my own. No, you don't. Absolutely, you don't. You're reliant on the people that put you in that airplane in the first place, right from the people that actually built the thing, but more tangibly, the people that service it, work on it, support you to get you airborne, the air traffic controllers, the administrators that make everything work to stick it together and so on. That is the team, the whole team. In the corporate environment, very often you're looking at all of those back office people who are very important. They're very intangible a lot of the time for what you do, but they're very important in making the whole enterprise run. And if you take the time to make them feel like they're part of the team, it really does make a very, very big difference. And if you're the leader, the tone from the top makes a huge difference here. What you do and the way you behave and the way you set out your stall in terms of the example you set, people will either respect you for it or actually really not respect you for it. And they'll be probably at best indifferent. At worst, they'll be actively disparaging about you as a leader. So you do need to really think about how you do that. Because if you don't set that right tone right from the beginning, right from relatively early doors when you're in a leadership role, then it's hard to get the kind of people in the place you want them to be in. So very early on, paying attention to what's the morale like, what's the culture like, what's the organization feel like, and when you walk in the door, you get that feel. If you've been leading for a while, you'll be probably pretty attuned to this. That very quickly you'll walk into an organization and know, is it happy? Are the people there enjoying what they do? Are they finding it satisfying turning up to work? Do they work with purpose? Do they feel that they're appropriately empowered to do what they do? Are they being rewarded in the broader sense? And I don't just mean just pay. I mean actually the whole kind of package that goes around that makes them feel part of the organization and respected and valued within the organization. I used to reckon if I walked on to any unit when I was a station commander in the Air Force, if I walked around my base, I could walk into any unit, and within 5 minutes, I would have a pretty good feel about whether this was well run, well led, and how it was all going. Because you just get a general sense from the way people greet you, the body language they have, the how clean and tidy the place is, how things are sort of showing up in terms of the output that they're producing and the things they're saying to you, the kind of the upbeat or downbeat kind of conversation that you're having with people. All this stuff is really important in turning around and thinking, okay, I've got a good feel for this. It's positive, it's happy, it works, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, why doesn't it? What's wrong? Is it something deeper? Is it actually an individual? Is it more of a collective thing? Is it that they genuinely are under some kind of pressure that they can't deal with, etc.? But being aware of that and looping back to my theme of hearts and minds is vitally important. Because if you can start having a feel and a sense of where that sits, you have a great chance of being able to turn around and further develop and improve the organization and massively enhance its effectiveness. Because good, happy people make for happy teams, make for productive teams, make for good outputs. And that is what you want. That's what any business wants. And people want to feel that you care. They really do think that that matters to them. They want to believe that you care about them, not just as a team, not just as a resource, but actually as individuals. So little tiny things here make a difference. If you're good with names, that makes a huge difference. Being able to turn around and go up and see you and address someone by name. Not everybody is. I certainly am not. That's one of the areas I constantly have to work on to try and be better at names. And I've made some howling mistakes over the years that I try very hard not to repeat these days. But it is definitely a bonus. Take that one level deeper. If you actually have some level of understanding and consideration about someone's personal circumstances, then again, that can, in the right circumstances, make a real difference. Because if someone's been ill, or if they've recently had a bereavement, or more positively, they've actually had a new baby arrive, or they've got a new dog, or they've got a new hobby or something, and you know about it and you care and you pay attention to that, then actually they will be surprised probably that you're paying attention, particularly depending on how senior you are in the organization. But it just makes people feel that, wow, he actually does care about me. I worked for an individual once who he was amazing with names, absolutely amazing with names. He could go years without seeing you and still would, immediately be all over it. He would know who you were. He kind of had this innate ability to turn around and talk to you about things that you go, how on earth does he know that? Now, I don't know how he did that. I really don't know what he did to turn around and have that kind of intelligence briefing, as it were, on you as an individual. But what I know is how it made me feel. And it's the Maya Angelou quote, isn't it? It's, people won't remember what you say or what you do necessarily, but they'll certainly remember how you feel. I'm mangling the quote, but the gist is right. And it's so important to do that. But how much do you practice what you preach? A lot of people talk about this. A lot of people talk the talk about hearts and minds, and it's so important, and people are my first priority, and we're investors in people as an organization, etc. But how much do we actually do it as leaders? That's what I want you to think about a little bit as you go through some of what I'm saying here, because you have to walk the walk as well as talk the talk in this space. If it's empty words, it's completely meaningless. It doesn't achieve anything. And it's not good enough to simply turn around and say, okay, we're laying on an event or providing some free drinks for something, or a Christmas party, or whatever it happens to be, and actually not being there yourself to turn around and demonstrate that you're part of the team and you're leading the team from the front and you're actually there. When I first left the Air Force, I went to work for Deloitte. And it's a great company. I loved my time there, and I loved an awful lot of the people I worked with. But I saw some extraordinarily good examples of leadership. And I also saw some that I really wasn't so chuffed with. And one of those was very early on when I was in the organization, where I'd only been there a few weeks. And we had a social event associated with promotion for a bunch of people in the team, and new hires, both experienced hires and new graduate hires. And it was in a venue that was very, very close to the office. It was literally walk out of the office, turn right, 10 yards, you're in it. It was part of the same building that we were actually in. And I'd been there. I went to the event. It was not least because it was my arrival drinks. It was so I was part of the welcome, but I'd only just got there. And I looked around and I was chatting to people. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes, I said, so where are the partners, the leaders of the business here? And the comment back was, oh, they never come to these kind of things. And I'm going, oh, really? Because they're busy. I know they're busy. And it's, their lives are challenged and all the rest of it. But freeing up the time, freeing up the space to be there, even for a short space of time, would have made such a material difference. So just think about how your own behavior is kind of walking the walk here. Are you really doing what you want? Are you setting the example, setting the tone that you want your team to see and believe about you? It's a bit of a personal brand thing to some extent. You are definitely setting a standard that I'd like to think as a leader you want people to believe in and think it's the right one. Listening to the team is also vitally important in this space. Again, it's no good just turning around and being on transmit and in the hearts and minds space, particularly not. You need to absolutely be thinking about what are they saying to you and what are you doing about it? Because if they have to say it to you for a second time or a third time, then you will start to lose them. You either need to explain to them why you can't do what they're asking you to do, or you need to get on and actually do it and make some change. And that may be that takes time, and that's fine. But you need to be explaining that. You need to be demonstrating what you're doing to make their lives better in the way that they think they need to be made better. And occasionally you'll have a bigger picture thing here. You'll be able to turn around and go, yeah, I know that's what you think you want, but in reality, you probably don't want to go there. So be careful what you wish for. Some of that is around experience from previous things for you. You may have been around there and this is a reinvention of the wheel that you don't want to see. And there may be a very good reason for not doing it. But certainly it's worth having in your toolkit the ability to turn around and listen, and then also play back appropriately what is actually happening. What's your response to having listened? And when you listen actively. Don't listen passively. Make time. Make people know that you actually really are paying attention to what they're saying. They'll know if you're not. If you're distracted and looking at something else, or you're looking around the room and you're not really paying attention to them, that's worse than not turning up to the event. You need to be in a position where you are actually paying attention. I remember again another short story years ago when I was running a detachment in Saudi Arabia, and we had a visit from a very senior guy, a 3-star officer who came out. He was the chief of joint operations at the time, and he wanted to go and meet lots of people that were part of the detachment. And like most of these visits, there was a very tight timeline, and we had to get him off the base at the end of the time. And I was under pretty clear remit, right? Get him off the base on time. And so I was sort of hassling him a little bit and moving him on between the various events that we had in the diary. And we got to the end of the visit, and he turned to me and he said, "Bob, this was great. Thanks very much indeed. But next time when I'm back, I'll be back relatively soon," because obviously operations was his business and this was an operational deployment, and he was back only a few weeks later. The next time I come back, I'd like to meet more people and spend more time with people. So I said, "Okay, sir, no problem at all." Comes back, next visit, I'd factored in that more time for people. And the very first part of the visit, I think he was scheduled to be 15 minutes with a group of individuals. We'd arranged for him to meet lots of people, and we probably used more than double that time. And he came out of the event and he looked at me and said, "Bob, I'm sorry. I know we're probably a bit over time, but I think it's really important to have a proper conversation." And I just looked at him. I said, "Sir, don't worry about it. You're preaching to the choir. I think that's such an important thing if they're having a kind of meaningful conversation." Meanwhile, some of his staff are kind of looking at me with daggers to go, we need to keep it on time. We need to keep moving it forward. But the reality is it matters. And to the people on the ground, it really, really matters, particularly from the more senior end of the leadership. The more rarefied they are in terms of the atmosphere they're coming from and so on, then the more important probably some of those conversations actually are. And it's only useful if you make it meaningful, if you have that conversation that actually is a bit more than just a superficial thing, and actually you are genuinely listening and paying attention to what people say to you, by and large, because you're going to get some good input from them as well, which is something that's definitely worth considering. I mentioned the personal bit. I think that, again, that's pretty key, because just occasionally you'll pick up subliminal things. You'll pick up things from other people as well in the team. You'll start to notice dynamics within the people that work for you about, are they on their normal form? If you know them well and you understand what their normal behavior is like, then that's really, really valuable information to you, because it can start telling you, what am I, what should I do about this particular situation? If someone's off form, you'll have a better feel for, is it something I need to ask them about, intervene with? Is there someone else, some other way I can find out? Or how am I going to handle this? If you don't know them, it's very difficult to gauge that. You have no feel. So you can't know everybody, particularly if you've got a big organization, but you want to encourage that behavior in the people that work for you. So they've got some kind of almost spider sense to understand, right, okay, is the team okay? Are the individuals in the team okay? If someone is particularly off for a reason, if they're not performing very well and they're normally a very high performer, if they're disappearing off, and they don't go to any social events anymore, but when they're normally very gregarious and always very social, then why is that? It's probably not that they're just rubbish suddenly and their performance has dropped off a cliff. There's probably something else that is happening. So taking the time to understand that, taking the time to investigate, really makes a difference. I mentioned the whole team thing, looking at the team as an entire entity, and a lot of organizations just don't do this. So when you're having, to use a consulting example again, if you're having an account team event, social event for the end of a big delivery, or you're having a party that of some kind of celebration, how many times do you actually invite the people in the kind of back office services, HR, IT, security, all those people that pretty much get forgotten about in the organization, but actually are really important to the overall greasing of the wheels that makes the organization run smoothly? There's a famous story from 1962, President John F. Kennedy visiting what was then Cape Canaveral during the space race, when they were looking to beat the Russians to get somebody on the moon. And President Kennedy was visiting NASA. And as he was walking around, meeting a lot of different people, he went over and he chatted to a guy who was sweeping the floor in the hangar. And he said to him, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon, Mr. President." And that was the team culture they had created at the time. It wasn't a flippant comment. He really was part of that team. That team was all about getting a man on the moon, and everybody within the team counted. Everybody within the team counted. And if you can, again, foster that kind of culture, productivity is likely to be significantly better. So it's definitely something you want to be aspiring to do. Not possible all the time, I get that. But where you can, find a way to be that inclusive kind of individual. Protecting your team, as well as all the stuff I've already been talking about. Thinking about how your team is going to be looked after by you early on. What are the metrics you're going to give them? What kind of support are you going to give them? What conditions are you going to apply to that? I used to turn around and I talk about umbrellas and funnels. And I used to try very hard and be very clear with people working for me that, right, I am putting an umbrella up over the team here. My starting point is I will protect you from everything you do as long as you're doing best effort, you're working as hard as you can to deliver the task and the project in hand. And if you make mistakes, then that's fine. I'll accept that you make mistakes. As long as you're not a serial mistake maker and you don't do it too frequently, then I'll forgive kind of all of that stuff, and I will look after you, and I will particularly protect you from heat from outside the organization. As long as A, you're doing your best, B, you're not breaking the rules, and C, you tell me about it before someone else tells me about it if something's gone wrong. And that's a thing that served me really, really well, because the reason I say umbrellas and funnels is the umbrella was all of that part. If, on the other hand, I did find somebody who had broken the rules or had turned around and done something that they tried to cover up, they hadn't told me, and I'd then been told by somebody else outside that immediate sphere, usually one of my superiors, and I'm finding out about something, my ability, of course, to protect them at that level disappears very rapidly. And so at that point, my umbrella inverts and becomes a funnel, and I'm now turning around and saying, right, okay, you now need to be accountable for this. You have breached the contract, if you like, that we had, and therefore, I'm no longer protecting you. What the basic premise of what I'm saying, what it does is if you do it well, I think it really does inspire loyalty and belief in the people that work for you. And again, another story from my Air Force time years ago. Again, I was flying at RAF Coningsby. I was the station commander there, but I flew on the Battle of Britain Memorial flight, and that was a great privilege to do that and fly the Spitfires and Hurricanes of the flight. And we had an officer commanding the Battle of Britain Memorial flight. It was a squadron leader, so it was 2 ranks below me. And I was obviously always turning up on his unit and going flying, and he was always very respectful and knew exactly where the kind of land lay in relationship terms. And we were flying a sortie one day where he was leading it. I was the number 2 in the formation. And we were doing a fly past over a big RAF headquarters. So a lot of the RAF hierarchy on the ground. And therefore, it was important that we got it right. And we knew those sorts of events were always quite high visibility. Anyway, we flew it. I was, for the actual fly past portion, the first part of it, I was in line astern, so behind him, looking up at him, so behind and below, and all I was doing was basically making sure I was in good formation. I couldn't see anything below me because I had no capacity to look down there. And we then did a sort of 270-degree turn and flew back, changing formation, so I'm now high up and alongside him, essentially, and looking down on the crowd as we went past, and it was great. Everyone was waving. It all looked terrific. Fantastic. Fly back, land at Coningsby. We get out of the aeroplane, and the formation leader was kind of figuratively speaking, whipping himself all the way back into the ops room. And I went, what's wrong? And he said, well, I missed. I was about 100 yards to the east of the target as we went over the top. And it was a parade with a saluting dais and so on. So being over the top mattered. You needed to be very accurate. And we always aim to be on time and on track and perfectly on top. But there were a number of circumstances, as there often are with these things. And what had happened was we'd been told that we had to come from a particular direction, which was not a direction we would have chosen to come from. It made it very difficult to see the target till the very last minute. And as a result, when he did see it, it was too late to take any significant corrective action and get back to exactly the right place. But the response from the ground, where obviously we had all the senior players there, was markedly different. And my 2-up boss was really seriously upset that he felt that this was something we should not have messed up, that this was professional failure and was deeply unacceptable. And so the phone was kind of ringing off the hook by the time we got back into the ops room. I obviously got the call from his staff officer. And the staff officer said, the boss is really furious about this. He wants to speak to the formation leader. And, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and that was a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, was obviously deliberately to make a point. And he wants to have a conversation with him about how this happened. And I said, look, he can have a conversation with me. I'm the senior supervisor. I authorized the sortie, so signed on the line to approve the sortie taking place because that was the routine. The senior guy would tend to do that. And so if he wants to speak to someone, he can speak to me. And he said, oh, okay, I suppose that'll be all right. And anyway, the next morning, so I'm on a video conference with my air officer commanding, who was furious and gave me a very hard time. And it was a really, pretty unpleasant conversation for probably 25, 30 minutes. And I won't bore you with all the details of the whole conversation, but the bottom line was I effectively took one for the team. And the guy that was leading the formation, the officer commanding of the flight, he was immensely grateful for the fact that I had spared him from going up in front of the big boss. I could have very legitimately, in his eyes, put him under the bus. Because he was the leader. It was his responsibility to be there. I was just the number 2. I couldn't influence the actual outcome. And I said to him, no, this is back to the umbrella theory. This is I protect you. You made an honest mistake. We went out there that night to go and do the best we could do. And actually what happened was we missed the target. That's just unlucky. That's stuff that happens in the world we inhabit. And, there's no reason for you, therefore, to be given an absolute castigation by somebody for that. And if that was going to happen, then I was going to take it for you. That's the deal. That was in 2006. And he has never forgotten that. He reminds me about it pretty much every time we see each other in various events where we meet. And I think for me, what do I take from that is the value of that kind of approach, that being someone who is genuinely prepared to look after the team, protect the team within the bounds of reason really matters, and it really makes a difference. So I'm sorry it's a little bit of a long story, but I hope it's a useful one, because what I'm trying to do here is make sure you think harder, if this is useful to you, about how much hearts and minds actually plays a part to overall team cohesion, overall efficiency, overall output of what you do. If you've got a happy, well-motivated team who believe in the leader that they've got and who actually want to follow you and trust you and believe that you're going to protect them and look after them, and that you care about what's going on in their personal lives, and that you actually are prepared to say thank you and give them credit where credit's due, boy, will you reap the rewards from doing that. And so I really, really, really encourage you to think about, how much do I do? It's easy to talk about this stuff. What do I do? When was the last time I actually sat down and thanked people on an individual level in my team? When was the last time I turned up to an event and really did go around, work the room, talk to them, listen to what they were saying, and pay attention to that? And if that's not any time recently, then start thinking about how you can change that. Once again, I really hope this has been useful. I'm always grateful for you listening to these personal podcasts, and any feedback, gratefully received. But I'll see you again very soon. Thanks very much indeed. Bye now.